Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to East Central Missouri and the world, and welcome to the James Strong Show podcast number 258. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for making us a part of your day. I appreciate it. This podcast was recorded on the afternoon of Saturday, February the 26th, from the James Strong Studio in Western St. Charles County. It's the first time I've done this. This is the second podcast, not of the day, or not of the week, but of the day. Yeah, I did a podcast at dark 30 this morning. And I'm doing a second podcast, which was pre-scheduled actually for this afternoon. And my guest in studio is JJ Marx, who has been onto the podcast in the past. Welcome back, JJ.
Thanks for having me, James.
Glad to have you on. We decided to do this podcast in the afternoon because if we did it in the morning, perhaps people would think that we have a problem. And because the podcast is about...
They'd be right, by the way.
Yeah, I think, yeah. The podcast is about cocktails. And I just posted to Facebook about 15 minutes ago a cocktail that JJ made for me. It's a MaiTai. And I will say it looks different from the MaiTais that I had in Hawaii last week. But then that's what the podcast is about. You heard the podcast on Hawaii, and you are somewhat of a... perfectionist, to be kind, anal retentive, to be unkind.
I consider myself more of a pedantic mixologist. Yes, okay. That's right, James.
Very, very good. But you are the best drink maker that I know, and I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but tell me what you were thinking when you heard the podcast and heard me talking about, very unintelligently apparently, about MaiTais, what you thought, what you considered doing, and what you decided to do anyway. Go ahead and talk while I sip on this MaiTai.
Of course. So your podcast about Hawaii was quite entertaining, and it made me want to go to the islands myself. I've never been. One moment within the podcast, you were speaking about the MaiTai and how it's a traditional tropical drink. Describing the MaiTai, you said it's made with light rum, dark rum, bunch of juices, grenadine, shaken together, and that's the MaiTai. And I thought, man, that sounds like a delicious drink that I'd love to have at the beach or at the pool. But that's just not a MaiTai. It's not a MaiTai. And the MaiTai is one of the most misunderstood beverages that I know of, that I make. And it got me thinking, I could troll James on Facebook. I have his phone number. I could text him. But why would I be so particular about such a silly topic? Why wouldn't we just want to talk about it? Let's just talk about drinks. Let's talk about cocktails. Let's discuss the MaiTai. Let's discuss the old fashioned. Let's just talk about booze. You know, there's a lot going on in the world right now that people are yelling at each other about on Facebook. That let's not make this one of them. So let's just talk about it in person, and let's have a cocktail in the meantime.
Which is why we didn't do this thing at 9 a.m.
That's right. Because there is a non-zero amount of alcohol in these MaiTais, James.
Yeah, I'm about 2 sips into it, and I can already feel it, and it's wonderful. Thank you for making this.
Oh, you're welcome.
Okay. Now, I will tell you that the reason I spoke of the MaiTai the way I did is because that's what I read from a very reliable source. And that was the dog-eared menu at the Holiday Inn or not the Holiday Inn, but at the Hilton Hawaii Village restaurant. So no, it wasn't a reliable source, but that's what they said. And I thought, okay, well, I'll just read it from what they said. So, but I was wrong. Talk to me about the MaiTai.
Sure. So
the nice Hawaiian drink MaiTai, right?
Yeah, right. Exactly. The MaiTai was invented after World War II by Victor Bergeron, I believe his name is. Everybody knows him by Trader Vic. Have you ever heard of Trader Joe's?
Yeah.
Similar to that, except for it's a bar, not a grocery store.
Well, and you and I have been to the original Trader Vic's.
We have in California.
Mm-hmm.
So he was sort of one of the first movers and shakers within the tiki craze in the mid-century. So tiki, although it may borrow aesthetics from the South Pacific, is not a South Pacific cultural phenomenon. It's very American, and it's for people that wanted to pretend like they were on vacation, even though it's Friday night and it's February in the Midwest.
Okay.
And so you can go to Trader Vic's, you can go to Don the Beachcombers, and wear a Hawaiian shirt, drink interesting drinks made with interesting ingredients, hear interesting stories from a man who traveled the South Pacific, and go back home, probably get a cab back home and sleep it off, and then wake up in your own Midwestern miserable existence the next day.
Very cool. And so what is in a MaiTai? The original MaiTai that was made by the Trader Vic's dude.
So tiki drinks are notorious for being made with odd ingredients and lots of them.
This is no exception, is it?
No, it's not. The most important ingredient, I should say, the most unique ingredient would be orgeat syrup, which I didn't hear mentioned in the Hilton MaiTai, the delicious beach beverage that you spoke of.
Yeah, I think it was in there. I may have left it out. I don't know. I forget.
It probably wasn't. It wouldn't surprise me if it wasn't. It's an almond syrup. It's almond extract, or I guess like almond essence.
Okay.
With like orange flower, water, sugar. There's a few other ingredients, kind of all boiled together, made into a syrup. Has a very unique flavor, very nutty flavor that seems to play really well with Jamaican rums, very, very bold rums, high proof, bold rums, a little bit of lime juice, and then orange curacao is a very important ingredient. You could use triple sec if you wanted to, some sort of orange liqueur.
Okay.
And then
Cointreau if you wanted to.
Yeah, you could use Cointreau. Yeah,
Okay.
that would work. Or Grand Marnier maybe. And then a combination of rums. So the original MaiTai was actually made with Ray and Nephew 17-year rum. Trader Vic's ran out of that, called their distributor up and said, hey, we need more of this. And the distributor came back and said, unfortunately, you drank all of it and we don't have it and it doesn't exist anymore. And he says, oh, shoot, what do we do? So then they migrated toward, I believe, 15. So 17-year aged, high proof Jamaican rum. That's a very rich rum. So then they had to downgrade it to 15 years. Well, they drank all of that too. And so now the recipe in a way is a bit lost because nobody can really find the rum that is made with. Now people use different combinations of them. So the one we're drinking here is a combination of Hamilton Jamaican rum and Bacardi. But you could do lots of different things. I use a Ray and Nephew overproof rum, unaged, which you can find at any store. You can use Appleton Estate. It is pretty important to use Jamaican rum in it because it gives it that funky, rummy taste that you're not going to get in something like Bacardi or Myers' rum would work too.
Why is Jamaican rum so important? I mean, I know you've told me before there's 3 different types of rum. I mean, I always thought there were 25 different types of rum, but you had told me before there's 3 distinct types of rum, and Jamaican rum is one of those.
Well, so a lot of times your rum is going to be based on the home country in which it would have been distilled or the colonizing force in the country that it would have been distilled in. And so you've sort of got a Jamaican, most people just call it Jamaican style. That would be a pot still rum that is made with molasses. Typically it has a darker color to it, but it may not. And it's known for its high character taste to it. Like it's very, a lot of people say funky. So the funkier Jamaican rums, it almost tastes, and this sounds disgusting, but it tastes like rotten fruit in a way. Would you drink a bottle of that after, running a mile? Absolutely not. But it's an interesting taste that you can kind of work with different flavors. And so a MaiTai is kind of good because it also has a sprig of mint as a garnish, lime juice, the orange peels from the curacao. It plays well with the Jamaican rum.
Well, I will tell you that this drink doesn't taste funky at all. It's magnificent. It's sweet. It's a little bit sour. It's got very unique flavors. It's not funky at all. I mean, it's fantastic.
And that's the thing about, making drinks is you can use interesting ingredients and it's the sum of its parts is more than just a combination of the flavors that you put together. And so that's kind of what makes it so fun. You can sort of play with different ingredients. And the thing about making drinks is it's not really even about the spirit that you use. That's not even the most important thing to do whenever you're starting your own bar. You play with different, variables, different mixers that you want to use, different vermouths, different curacao, bitters, syrups, fruit juices, obviously, as well. And so that's sort of a really good way to set different spirits apart from each other.
Well, getting back to that Jamaican rum, you had said the island or the original influence of the island. I'm assuming that Jamaica would be a British influence then.
Right.
Okay. See, I always thought that rum was just Caribbean rum. I guess I'm wrong.
Well, a lot of rum is distilled in the Caribbean.
Right.
And the reason for that is because
it's made from sugarcane.
And so molasses was basically a byproduct of, pressing sugarcane, and molasses was useless. And so somebody decided they'd probably been doing it in the islands for a long time, the native people there.
Mm-hmm.
But they were able to distill the molasses, which would have been just thrown away anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And they were able to make this rum with it. And so that's sort of how it started in the Caribbean. But, different cultures do things differently. And so why that is, it's just the colonizing force did things differently. And so like the French colonizers, those would be in places like Haiti or Martinique. They were known for being a little more refined in their way of distilling. And so they would make they would almost age it like a cognac, almost the way that they would distill wine, they just decided to distill rum.
Okay.
And so and I've actually never had a French influence rum before, but they have a different character from an English one, which would be more like Jamaican.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've also got more Spanish influence. So that would be your, Cuban or Puerto Rican rums.
Okay.
And, all of them are good in their own way, and they can sort of be able to play off of each other in different cocktails.
So if I decided to make a MaiTai using only Puerto Rican rum, that wouldn't be a heresy, would it?
No.
Okay.
Because if you enjoy it, then it's fine.
But I guess you've got to have the, what is the sweetener, orange or
Orgeat syrup.
Orgeat syrup. You have to have that, I guess. That's probably pretty important.
That's a very important part of it, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And most of the time, if you go to a non-tiki bar and you ask for a MaiTai, you might get something that you really like. It's probably not a MaiTai. That's all.
I will say we had MaiTais in 4 different places, and most of them, they didn't call them a MaiTai per se. They had our take on the MaiTai is what they would say. You had the Tropics Bar MaiTai. You had we went to a Chart House restaurant, once to eat, once to drink. They had what they called a Gai Tai. And I liked it because it came in almost like a tumbler. Okay. And for $8 you had one, and trust me, that was enough. You didn't want two. And there was $8 and on happy hour it was $7.
Mm-hmm.
So you had your one drink. Of course, at the luau, they had some type of a mix in a bottle, and they threw rum in with it. Okay, that's what they called the MaiTai. And then on the cruise, they called it their take on the MaiTai. We went on a dinner cruise in the Pacific one night. They all tasted different, though. A rum and Coke is rum and Coke. Gin and tonic is gin and tonic. A Negroni is a Negroni. These MaiTais were not MaiTais. They were all different.
And it's got to be, you can't trademark a drink. There's 2 drinks that I know of that are actually trademarked. Besides that, I mean, I guess if you wanted to, you could throw together a rum and Coke, hand it to somebody, and call it a MaiTai. Like, you could legally do that.
Mm-hmm.
But certain people are expecting different things. And so, when you go to Hawaii on a vacation and somebody handed you this, I mean, you may not have that in mind. And so,
Mm-hmm.
they probably have the ingredients list on there. They call it their own take on it.
Right.
And, the cocktail police aren't going to come and arrest you. It's just